Okay, here we go. Chapter 2, the pathways of the redemptions, Darchei HaGeula, the Sefer of the Yanuka. Let's go. Kashero yisra'el, ketzad mishtabdim b'hem Mitzrayim. Once the Israelites saw and realized how the Egyptians were subjugating them while they were in Egypt, once it occurred to them, it's like, whoa, we're being subjugated. We didn't even realize. Nifkechu einehem lahavchin b'tzad hara v'ha'achzariyut shel Mitzrayim. Their eyes were open to finally understand the side of darkness and evil and cruelty that the Egyptians were holding on to, that they were practicing, that they were doing, that they were living. Ach mipnei shelo ba'u lekach ele mitzad hayusam avadim mishabdim l'Mitzrayim. But they only came to this realization and conclusion once they became like slaves and were serving in Egypt. Because they were slaves and serving in Egypt, that's what led them to the awareness of how cruel the Egyptians are and how wicked their ways are. Because they were slaves in servitude. Therefore, they realized, they opened up their eyes, but they still hadn't been disgusted totally to distance themselves from the ways of the Egyptians. They knew what was going on, but they were still stuck in it. They were still acting like them. And they needed to expand their consciousness in this manner, the following manner. That they should know and understand that even when they're not subjugated to Egypt, that they shouldn't desire their ways. It's like, listen, it's one thing that we don't like you in this, but we still act like you. But no, you have to not only be disgusted by them and their ways, you have to just distance yourself from acting like them too, because that's easy. And not to want to be like them. I want to be like the Egyptians. I want to dress like them, talk like them. I want to go to their public sporting events. I just want to fit in. I want to be like them. You can't. Which means to say that the Israelites then became disgusted with the impurity, the defilement of Egypt, of the Egyptians, of their ways of life. And they forever have no desire or want that their portion should be the same portion of the Egyptians, their lifestyle. yisrael sholtin al ha-Mitzrayim. And even if the Israelites would have conquered the Egyptians and made the Egyptians work under them, now we rule over you, yisrael nivdalim u'ferushim idarkam v'deyoseihem shalem Mitzrayim, then even the Israelites would be separated and distanced from the ways of the Egyptians and the way they think. We're slaves, we're acting like you. Even if you were the slaves, we have to get to this point where the Israelites had to get to this point where we don't even want to be like these Egyptians. We don't want to have nothing to do with the way they are. And in order that Israel should achieve this level where they are disgusted and don't want to act like and be like the Egyptians, in order to distance themselves from the Egyptians, they had to stay and remain in Egypt to see the fall of the Egyptians and their disgrace that was tremendous, that happened to the Egyptians through the 10 plagues. This is we had to not only leave slavery, but we had to see them fall so hard because the Egyptians had such egos. We're gods. Pharaoh used to go to the bathroom in the water because he had to hide the fact that he went to the bathroom because he was a god. Them falling was what? I didn't think that could be possible. Every plague by plague that happened according to its details and events, how it unfolded. Every one, so much more and more, the Israelites would return and strengthen themselves. V'tischazek das yisrael, and their knowledge would be strengthened. Lidvok b'tzur machatzavatam, that they would be strengthened and to attach themselves to the rock from which they were hewn from, to like the stone that they were carved from, like from our real source of our souls. That's what they wanted to attach themselves to our real, genuine spiritual source. And to be disgusted by the pathway, the ways that the Egyptians acted. And that by staying in Egypt and seeing the downfall of the Egyptians, they would have knowledge and know that their portion is not of the portion of the Egyptians forever, no matter what. And even now, that there's a part of the story where they weren't even servants anymore. They weren't slaves to the Egyptians anymore. They had to become disgusted and by the Egyptians and not desire to attach themselves to the Egyptians. It's like, you know how many times in Europe, like we were just persecuted by these people, and then like they let us go, and like we're like, actually we kind of want to be like you guys, and like so we act like them, and then guess what? Within 100 years later, they persecute us again, and then we're like, these guys are horrible, and then like we end the persecution, and then we're like, you know what? We kind of like your ways. Let's go to the pub. Let's go to the sporting events. Let's just try to be like them as much as possible. We keep falling into that. So the Israelites had to get out of this desire to be like them, even if they weren't slaves anymore. Hayinu shemilvad shietzu yisrael lecherus me'aroa v'achzarius shel yemei hashibud. So except for outside the fact that the Israelites left to freedom from the evil and cruelty of their days of slavery, yetzu lecherus gami ma shedimu bedatam sheish ezu hana v'simcha lis'anig lios k'mitzri. It wasn't like enough, or not only did they leave slavery, they left in a state of freedom in what they thought in their imaginations was like awesome, like a pleasureful life, like the life of joy and pleasure, to behave and act like the Egyptians. So there's two exits. We had an exit from slavery, then we had an exit from wanting to be like the Egyptians. That was like a second redemption for us, because it was one thing we could leave, but we may leave and still be like, bro, that Egyptian culture was pretty awesome. Like, no, it was not. That was a messed up culture. It was disgusting, horrible, and sick. So Hashem had to leave us in Egypt to notice how cruel they were, so we wouldn't want to be like them, but then to see their downfall, which was like the thing that was like, whoa, we're not going to act like them. This is like a lesson for everyone who is in the exile today, who is acting like their host nation, A lot of Jews, the greatest death, or the greatest way Jews are disappearing today, is assimilation. We lose more Jews to intermarriage in America than we lost to Jews dying in the Holocaust. Why? We want to be like the Americans. Guy, one generation later, you got a Christmas tree in your house. It's like we're acting like the host nations. So America is great, by the way, and provided great freedom for the Jews. Super important to not think that the American way of life is the way of life, like football on Saturday and toss the pig skid and the barbecue culture and get drunk and keg stands and send your kids to join a fraternity and a sorority, like all these things, like we're just acting like the host nation, who at the end of the day, that's not the ultimate way to chill or to have spirituality. And I'm not hating on America. Like, America provided the ultimate safety for Jews, and there's more Torah being learned in America like the history of 2,000 years. I'm just saying there's a fine line between acting like the American way and just appreciating having freedom in America, but still acting like Klal Yisrael, acting like the Jewish people. I'm not here to like nitpick and make people feel bad about their ways. My sons like Yankee games. They go to Yankee games. That's okay. Just know, I don't know if it is okay, but they're doing it, When the redemption comes, maybe we'll all leave. But we have to know, really just know there's a difference between our ways and the ways of the nations of the world. And so I want to be very grateful to everyone for sticking. It's a long lesson. The blessing is we should act like our ancestors. We should still have gratitude for the host nations. I'm not hating on our host nations, but just have a lot of gratitude that we can be separate in their ways, hot dog eating contests. There's poverty in the world, but we're having hot dog eating contests. What's going on over here? Nonetheless, I love you all so much. Sorry for the rants and rambles. Hope everyone has a happy holiday. And I'm just running back from prayer, so sorry about the prayer shawl. Didn't have my hat. I'd like to double cover. Over and out.